All right. Welcome to the Unfazed, Unedited podcast, where we provide commentary on complicated topics in an uncomplicated format. I'm Dr. Shauna Payne Gold, and I go by she, her, hers pronouns. And Dr. Lisa, once again, we have the switcheroo at the time of this recording. It's like I'm probably going to be living in a Colorado-ish life, and you're going to be living a
Yep.
Marylander life.
Hmm.
You all need more snow, and we're predicted to get a ton of it here. So if I could ship it to you, I would, but here we are.
Yes, 28 inches at the high end, right, for you all, which is just unfathomable.
Well,
Um,
and I always consider how unprepared we are in comparison to areas of the country that are just simply used to more volume. I mean, it's not that we can't necessarily handle snow at all, but once you get over a certain number of feet, then it gets really interesting. So anyway, yeah, we're getting the snow boots and the snow pants and the snow shovels, and the boys might make a little side money shoveling snow and
I love it.
all the things. So yeah, that's what we're planning for. But anyway, it's a good thing that we are jumping on the mic now because on my end of the country, Lisa, they are predicting that there's the possibility of up to 3 inches of ice along with that snow. And so you and I, we try to
Yep.
record at a certain time, and that probably would be the time where we're in the thick of it. So
Yep. Yep.
don't want to take for granted that we have our usual resources, right? So glad that
Hmm.
we could jump on today. This is that uptick, y'all, right before us snow when it gets a little bit warmer and then it all comes down. We're at 52 right now after 3 days of 18 to 20 degrees here. So, we'll see. We'll see. But look, while we were preparing for whatever's coming our way, decided to do a podcast on a very important phase speech that we heard, and I'm so excited to talk with y'all about it. So let's get into the word of the week first. So the word of the week actually came from the speech that we're going to be talking about in the next phase that was sent to me by several different people. But the word is hegemon, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. I
Hmm.
usually say hegemony, so that I rarely say it in the noun form. That's why it doesn't roll off my tongue as easily as it should. But it means a supreme leader, a supreme leader. And if we're talking about hegemony, we're talking about leadership or dominance, especially by one country or one social group over others. And Lisa, I know there's probably tons of stuff written about hegemony or examples of it, but I continue to go back to that Isabel Wilkerson masterpiece of caste,
Hmm.
where it's giving you parallel examples of caste systems, class, race, racism, and so forth. And in that book, even though it isn't specifically speaking to a hegemon or um, of any form of leadership or dominance, you can't really talk about a caste system without talking about who's leading and dominating. And
Right.
so it
Right.
does, it's kind of like an undercurrent of that book, Lisa. And so that was one of the first things I thought about when I heard this word pop up. So Lisa, it's interesting because by definition, if you're a supreme leader or a small group of supreme leaders, it is by definition small. It's not meant to describe everyone. Yet at the same time, knowing it when you see it, Lisa, that's the issue, is because it should be so rare, we need to be able to recognize when we see a hegemon or any
Yep.
form of supreme leadership rearing its head because it will be ugly. So yeah, trying to recognize it when we see it, I think is might be my biggest takeaway from this word of the week, actually.
Hmm.
But I know you know what this word means, but would you have other examples to add to mine from cast in particular? Because it's that running undercurrent in the entire book. Um,
Yeah, yeah, no, I
yeah.
think he did a really great job. I mean, obviously it's going to relate to our next phase here in who is being referred to or what is being referred to, but
Yeah.
it's not a word that is often used, to your point, right? Hegemony is what we hear. We don't hear hegemon.
Hmm.
And so I think it
Hmm.
also, when I think of hegemony, I think of things like masculinity, right?
Yeah.
Hegemonic masculinity, or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I hadn't really thought about it as a label for a country necessarily, right? It's more kind of, I think about it as like a system of ideas that is dominating. So it's just a different way. You're just raising kind of a different way for us to think about how power operates. So I love it for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And we always like to talk about power around here because if you don't talk about power, you can't talk about the powerless or the less powerful. So,
Mm-hmm.
of course, we
Mm-hmm.
want to talk about all that. All right, let's get into phase one. So, Lisa, I'll guide us into this conversation just quickly, only because not that
Mm-hmm.
I'm fully equipped to talk about this, but what what really got me, Lisa, a lot of stuff floats around social media, but when it's something that's really, really poignant, telling, truth telling,
Mm-hmm.
it gets shared. And I pay
Yep.
attention to
Yep.
not only the speech being shared, but who it was shared by when it comes to who shared it with me. There were 7 people that shared a link to the YouTube speech of Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney's speech at the World Economic Forum
Mm-hmm.
um, in Davos, if I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
7 people shared it with me. I believe you shared it with me. My former supervisor, thank you, Maggie, for sharing this with me. I love her brain and how it works because her brain uh, automatically works from a global perspective. She has family in the UK, and so she thinks from a global perspective
Mm-hmm.
already, which helps me to think that way. Um, 3 attorneys,
Oh my
which I
gosh.
thought was fascinating. And then someone else that sent it to me who is an expert in environmental policy. So when I think about those heavyweights that sent me this
Mm-hmm.
speech, that was very telling because it's like, okay, I knew by virtue of who sent me the speech that I would need to like clear my schedule and focus on like it couldn't be background noise, Lisa. I couldn't just let it run in the background while I'm doing something else. I need to stop. I need to take a few notes. I need to get out a highlighter and some post-its because this was about to be a whole class in and of itself, Lisa. And so, what I thought was so powerful about the Prime Minister's speech is that I am not a economics guru, y'all. I mean, like I am not an expert. It doesn't come to my brain easily. I was grateful for the good old C that I got in Econ 101 at James Madison University because I just did not get it. But this gentleman speaking to where we are in the
Mm-hmm.
world
Mm-hmm.
was so powerful to me. First of all, because I could grasp it easily. But secondly, he laid out a clear case for the powerful and the powerless,
Yeah.
and what indeed we should do to make sure that we are not inadvertently bolstering a totalitarian system that we don't want to bolster,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll just get into the beginning part of it, and then Lisa, please take it away. But he starts by citing Havel's 1978 work, The Power of the Powerless. Interestingly enough, I actually read this in undergrad and had forgotten it even existed. So the
Oh,
fact that he brought
okay.
it back up, I kept saying, why does this sound familiar? The power of the powerless. I thought it might have been something from seminary because we read some stuff about it there, but no, this was from undergrad. And it's actually an incredible essay, if you will, because it talks about a number of things. It talks about responding to the question of how did the communist system sustain itself? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what kept it from falling apart? Why was it so strong? And what was very interesting about that sustenance is that there were folks that were okay with living a lie. There were folks that were willing to
Mm-hmm.
perform, and that performance ended up becoming compliance in a way that may have been unintentional. But what happens when you, even one person stops complying, when one person stops performing, what does that mean for the entire system? Lisa, it kind of reminds me of it was a quote that we mentioned way back when, right around election time. And it was mentioning, what can one vote do? Signed by 8 million people or something like
Right,
that. This
right.
feels very similar. It's like, what can one person do to help
Mm-hmm.
an authoritarian regime like what we are experiencing now? How can we dismantle it, signed by 8 million people or however many people?
Right,
Well, we always think from the individual perspective, not realizing the cumulative effects if we all made very specific personal decisions that align with our morals and values rather than let's just go with the current of the river here. And it is what it is. Sometimes I think, Lisa, it backfires for us, especially in the United States, where it is so heavily individualistic that we think that silence is not complicit when it actually is.
right, right.
And so anyway, he said much more than this, but Lisa, I don't want to hog the mic. Go right ahead on some things that maybe stood out to you from the Prime Minister's speech because it was so good. Oh, just a class in and of itself.
Yeah, and I think stepping back from that speech, I mean, Mark Carney spoke the day before Trump arrived, who then spoke and was supposed to only speak for 45 minutes, but rambled for close to 75 minutes and then did a Q&A. And the contrast between Mark Carney's and Trump's speech was just so clear, right? In terms of, Prime Minister Carney was just so clear eyed and direct and artful and kind of almost like lyrical in the way that he spoke. And then you have the next day this bumbling, baffling, mixing up Greenland and Iceland like he doesn't understand that they're two different places and just like attacking all the Europeans in the room. And he actually kind of did a thinly veiled threat against Mark Carney, something to the effect of, Canada exists because of us. So you need to remember that, Mark, next time that you speak, and that's like part of his speech. So I think when you pair those two together, it made me very sad because I was like, oh, Canada, can I please have your leader?
Yes, 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 please, please.
um, but
Hmm.
I think I was, as you were talking, I pulled up the text of the speech on my phone here. And there were a couple of things that I thought were really great that I just wanted to read. So one of the pieces from that Havel's piece is around living within the lie, right? We're all living within the lie. And he says, you cannot live within the lie of mutual benefit through integration when integration becomes the source of your subordination. So we have such an integrated economy, trade, information technology, travel, right? But then when one player in that field takes that integration and uses it as leverage, it then becomes the source of your subordination. And I thought that was very powerful. And he never named the US and China when he was talking about hegemons. He was talking about the USA and China, but he never named them, but everyone knew what he was talking about. And then he also, part of it, Shauna, to your, was the silence piece that you talked about, was this go along to get along. And I feel like that is happening. It's happening here
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
inside the United States. And then
Yes, yes.
it's happening with all of these countries that are just trying to appease. You can see in real time how authoritarian autocracies and totalitarianist states emerge
Yeah,
because
yeah.
through appeasement, right? Like, so
Hmm.
through the story that he tells
That's
about
right.
the sign in the window, and I'm just like, you're standing by and you're just watching it happen.
Yeah. Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that's why I thought his speech was so powerful because he named it.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, yeah, he named it. Well, and it's one of those moments where you have to figure out. that he's calling you out and calling you in.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
naming it like, no, you can't sit idly by because now you're complicit. And there is no, oh, my youngest, he loves the phrase. I used it one time and he's been using it for years now. My name's Bennett and I'm not in it.
Ah!
Whatever's going on, I'm minding my business. I have nothing to do with it. And that just does not work in the global landscape. It just does not work. And so with that, you know, folks will have to see that all of the small micro actions and micro behaviors hold up the very systems
Yeah.
that you say you don't want. They hold them, in fact, they give them great scaffolding to stay up.
Yeah.
And so, with that, I think that was one huge piece of the puzzle. Um, I love that phrase that he used, which I've heard before, but not in this context. He said, if we're not at the table, we're on the menu. And I
Yes.
love that because again, it he pulled I wish we could find a video of this, Lisa. Kind of that trick of the eye where there's a table that has a tablecloth and lots of glasses and plates and so forth, and someone quickly pulls the tablecloth and everything stays where it's supposed to be. It very much reminds me of that is no, there is no neutrality. There is no situation where you can say that you're not involved because by virtue of being on the planet, you are.
Right.
And so,
Right.
given that, and he's mentioning around, if we're not at the table, we're on the menu, that calls out that neutrality. And the neutrality has become, Lisa, you and I have used this word many times when it comes to whiteness and other areas of privilege and being asleep in contrast to being woke, is that comfort. Like people
Yeah.
find comfort in neutrality. I don't want to be the bad guy. I don't want to be the good guy. I don't want to pick a side. I don't want to have to fight for anything. So let me just be neutral as if neutral isn't still harmful. And he named that.
Yeah.
And so he kind of pulled, the tablecloth out from under everybody to say, no, you don't get to be comfortable. That's not an option anymore. And so with that, I think it was a powerful speech naming how they are kind of in the middle, yet still super attractive. I mean, the fact that he said Canada has what the world wants, I'm like, oof, that is just
Yeah.
powerful there because it isn't as if Canada is a small country that's trying to flex small muscle. No, Canada is got plenty of big muscles to flex. And therefore, they're seeking to leverage that in ways that are useful for more than just themselves. And Lisa, I don't know if you caught that kind of near the end where he said he was giving some suggestions about what does it mean for the middle powers to live the truth of the matter. And he gave a list of suggestions, and he didn't just say it's a good suggestion for Canada. He said it was good suggestions
Yeah.
for every country, so it
Yeah.
wasn't even as if he was being greedy in the solutions to the
Right.
problem. He mentioned, rules-based doesn't function as advertised, criticizing economic intimidation from one side, but not from the other is, in fact, keeping the sign in the window,
Yeah.
developing a strong domestic economy for all countries, and then diversification internationally so that you can be economically prudent, have honest foreign policy, and then reduce the vulnerability to retaliation. He wasn't saying that as in this is what Canada's going to do and we're using that as a competitive advantage. He's like, no, actually, all ships rise here, honey. All ships rise. If we all did this, all of us
Yep.
would rise. So I just felt that was also very powerful too.
Yeah, it's a very communitarian perspective, right? It's this,
Yes,
you've
yes.
got these two big powers that are just facing off, right? And let's not just hunker down in the middle, right?
Yeah,
We
that's it.
actually have the capacity to band together and bring prosperity to all of us. And, he'd said this other piece that I just found that he said, when the rules no longer protect you, you must protect yourself. But let us
Mm,
be clear eyed about where this leads. A world of fortresses will be poorer, more fragile, and less sustainable. And
hmm
that's the community piece, right? So, okay, this rules based order that you're used to, the rule of law isn't operating, like it's malfunctioning, right? And you have
That's
these
right.
two big powers that are taking advantage of countries that were formerly allies. So the impulse
Mm,
is to retreat, right?
that's right.
Protect, retreat, appease, don't get attention on yourself, fly under the radar.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
essentially, what he's saying is that that would mean all these countries that do that in order to protect themselves will just build up these walls. And that
That's right.
ultimately makes us weaker and more
That's right.
fragile, right? And
That's
I
right.
really liked that because I think the current administration here in the US may not be building walls in the way that he's talking about it, but it's coming out swinging with like
Mm-hmm.
a mallet. You know, actually, this is the image I have in my head right now. Is like a cartoon giant that isn't very smart and has like a big club, and it's just like lumbering around with swinging
Mm-hmm.
the club, right, with no real direction and just using like brute force to get what it wants because
Yes.
it's bigger, but it's not really very strategic or very smart. That just popped into my head.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And Mark Carney is basically saying, okay, we need to band together, middle powers, be nimble, be strategic,
Yes.
be smart, build partnerships,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we can like run between the legs. Another thing that's popping into my head here, Shauna, you're
Yes.
going to laugh at this, is I'm thinking about Star Wars. So for any Star Wars people
Ooh.
who are listening, there are those big machines that I don't know what they're called, but they're like clomping along, right? They're huge, and
Yes.
the rebels fly around the legs. And
Mm-hmm.
because it's
Mm-hmm.
so big
Yep.
and unwieldy and top heavy with the rope around the legs, it basically falls over.
Falls over. Yep. It
And
tips
I
over.
see
Yep.
that's where I'm like, I'm pulling from Star Wars, I'm pulling from cartoons. I just got it's all the creativity is flowing here from the speech.
Right, right, exactly. Well, I'm waiting because you know how much I love political cartoons, so I'm waiting on whoever picks up on it to do a really powerful political cartoon. But no, you're exactly right. And it's clunky. I was just having that conversation earlier with somebody where we were talking about t talking about Kendrick being on defense in lacrosse where he's like running into a brick wall. Like for
Mm,
him, he's weighty, he knows his body, but at the same time, he has other defenders that do his same job. They're not as big, they're not as hefty, they're not as strong, but they have certain skills that Kendrick hasn't gotten yet. And I feel like, we as a country are, you're right, we're very clunky. And we even have some heavyweights around us, but do we have skill?
mm-hmm.
We'll get into that in another episode of the Unfazed Unedited podcast on skill, okay, or skill level rather. But we don't have that. We don't have that right now in the upper echelons of leadership, which means that we are going to be clunking around. And the prime minister has given pretty much any country that wants to take him up on the offer a very clear roadmap on how to get it
Mm-hmm.
done.
Yeah,
Very
100%.
clear. Very clear. And so, with that, I love that kind of the exclamation point at the end of the speech, where he says that we're taking the sign out of the window. The
Yeah.
old order is not coming back. Nostalgia is not a strategy. That is a
Mm,
bar, y'all. Nostalgia is not a strategy. From the fracture, we can build. And then he goes on to say that the our capacity is in that we stop pretending.
yeah.
The path to any country who is willing to take it up with us is open. So, with that, I'm just grateful for the map. And I think this is going to be one of those speeches that never dies. Frankly, I mean, it'll
Yeah.
be 50 years from now, people are still talking about the prime minister's speech on this, attempting to pull people together, looking. I know I'm aging myself. I was born the year that The Power of the Powerless was written. Looking that distance back and that distance forward at the same
Yeah.
time, you're not going to find that too often in a speech or in any diplomatic outreach to anybody. So,
Mm-hmm.
way to go, Mr. Prime Minister. You did that. You did that.
Yeah. 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 He is certainly risen, right? Or stepped up to the plate. in a
Yes.
way that other leaders haven't. I'm not very impressed with the Prime Minister of Britain right now, Keir Starmer. I feel like he is just a
Hmm.
wet blanket and he is just trying to keep his head down. And I
Yeah.
do not agree with that. I think
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
they need to come out swinging.
Oh, for sure. I think everybody needs to at this
Yeah,
point. I mean, you know.
yeah,
So yeah, but anyway, we thought it was phenomenal. We are
mm-hmm.
going to link the
Yep,
speech into the show notes as well as the essay, Václav Havel's essay, 1978 essay, The Power of the Powerless. I think it ties in a number of previous episodes that we've had before, Lisa, in that
mm-hmm.
essay around what do you do when you feel
Yeah,
powerless? You know?
yeah,
What do you do? Well, you got to do something because doing nothing is not neutral. Um, and please listen to the speech. I can't remember how long it was, but it is some kind of good. Look at the transcript, whatever you need to do, but take that. And I think that might be a great litmus test for what every country does moving
agreed.
forward.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
All right. Well, with that, oof, that was heavy, Lisa. Heavy, heavy, heavy.
mm-hmm.
But with that, I think that's a wrap for today. So, what I would suggest, we always try to give you something. We can be a Debbie Downer, y'all. We know that because we grapple with the pragmatism of the world as well as some of the solutions. But listen to the speech, read the essay, and then pay attention.
Yeah.
Especially to the country, the leaders of the countries where people that you love are. I have a great friend of mine, Amrita, who is a African American history professor, Canadian, but her father currently lives in Germany, and she's going to spend her sabbatical with him over the next few months.
Mm.
And she spoke with him. He's been a diplomat all over the world. He's, served in the military and so forth. And she asked her father, what do you think about what's going on in the world right now, but especially in the US? And he simply said, honey, I can't wait for you to get here to Germany. Incredible that at any
Yeah.
point anyone would say they would rather not be in the United States of America.
Yeah, that is a sentiment shared by a lot of different people right now. But I think I mean, not in your friend's case, but I would just say that
Yeah,
if all the people that are paying attention and are unhappy leave, then there's no one left
no one left.
to resist, right? To step up.
And ultimately, all that wanted to be here on their own by themselves and telling everyone to go home, they win.
Right. Right.
They win. Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
All right, y'all. Well, that's a wrap for this week's episode of Unfazed, Unedited Podcast. You can certainly reach us on all of our socials and on, of course, any podcast app that you have. You'll find us at Unfazed Unedited. Email us, y'all, at info@unfazedpodcast.com or visit our website at unfazedpodcast.com where you can access all the new and old shows. And if you liked this week's episode, look, Lisa, I'm going to start by sending this episode to the people that sent me the speech. Okay, that's the
Yes.
first thing I'm going to do is share it with them, right? Share it with them, like, subscribe, leave a review, and share with your friends, coworkers, or others in this phase of your life around the world, actually, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
until next week, we'll see you.
All right. Bye bye.